And we're live. Hi, everyone. It's me, Sasha Velour. I'm here in the Harper offices with my book, The Big Reveal, that just came out today, and my amazing editor, Jenny Shu, who truly revolutionized this experience for me. And I'm so glad that we get to be together to celebrate it on this day. I'm signing these books for you. Thank you so much for ordering these copies. Um, I'm going to put my signature on it and try to talk at the same time. So we will see how that goes. I wrote this book to make a case for the radical history of drag. And I thought that could be told best with stories from the past, a little manifesto about what drag is to combat all the misinformation that's still out there, and my personal story too, because everything I learned about drag, I learned by trying to do it myself. When I pitched this book to Jenny, it was like, very much a idea in progress, and I'm so grateful to her for thank you so much for believing in this project and telling me to make it a manifesto, to go strong with the political side, to not be afraid of that, and to put my visual art into that, because I was prepared to write a traditional book, and I think there is one buried in here, but we got to dress it up in drag and have fun with the design, have fun with the images. I mean, this book is so gorgeous and colorful, and I'm just so proud of it. So thankful to Jenny. So I'm hosting a show. Give it up for Jenny Shu.
Well, I definitely think we couldn't have done a traditional book in any way together. So I think it was utterly magical that you are, the queen of all queens. You do, comics, art, drag, and we talked so much about, how do we make the book 3D? Like, how do we kind of transform it from just text to action and image and all of it. But yeah, I'm so excited to be hosting.
We're celebrating.
We're celebrating a little bit.
We did it. It took a lot of years, a lot of work, a lot of drafts. She quilted it together for me from fragments.
It was so lovely. But I'm so excited to talk to you a little bit more and field some questions from the audience. And I just want to remind everyone that you still have time to buy the book if you click the link in the description. It's also at premiercollectibles.com/Sasha. And yeah, I think I'm gonna get going on the questions.
Thank you for the official sign. I was like, there's no way I can remember that. Thank you again. Thank you for sending questions.
So maybe this is a good question to start it off in terms of both the book and also your drag as well. But where and how does your creative process for conceptualizing look like? How does it begin?
I do begin things with research. I love to go and check out some books in the library. I love to search online for drag from the past. I do get a lot of inspiration for drag and life and politics from looking at what's already been done out there, since people have already invented the wheel. And then for books like this, for my shows, I love to draw pictures. That felt a little counterintuitive for writing a book, but somehow it worked out, and I feel like the sketchiness of the plans for this book ended up in the final project.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like when we first started the book, we pulled from your old scripts from Nightgowns, and I think I was just so excited to see them because they're fully formed essays. They're full of research, and I was just oh my god, you can just stitch so much of the material together here, which is incredible.
I'm my little generation of Brooklyn drag artists was delivering full-on essays and lectures from the microphone/pulpit in our gay bars. And I somehow had a lot of the scripts, and I remember sending them to you, and you were like, this has to go in. So I just filled in around it, updated the thoughts.
Yeah, I feel so much from those scripts made its way through, and even just the experience of writing them made their way through into the book. I feel this is another question that also really ties in so closely to the book, but when you were younger, who or what inspired you?
Oh my gosh. I write about my extracting inspiration from the wicked femininity of the Wicked Witch of the West, of Dracula, Frumacera from Fiddler on the Roof I mentioned. I think queer people are drawn to the spooky and the scary because it's so often characterized as being kind of outside of the realm of traditional gender presentation. Oh, you're wicked because you're so big in personality. And maybe I was thinking about how Ursula the Sea Witch was literally drawn after Divine. Maybe some of that coding went in on their end too, making evil characters inspired by how queer people just act naturally, being some of the least evil people in the world. But some of that, maybe that's where there's that recognition. But yeah, I recognize myself in the villains and the divas and the ghosts, and I'm still kind of dressing like that.
And also family, which is a huge part of the book. Like, I feel like reading it, I got to know like Dina and your mother and your father and just so many family members so well. I mean, like, how did that feel kind of wading into that history?
It was amazing getting, I kind of knew that those would be some of the most fun stories. My family's so over the top and made me a drag queen in their own ways. Yeah, so I was happy, especially the women who inspired me and aren't here anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I always want my drag to tell those stories and to get to literally do it. That meant so much.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite parts was hearing about how your grandmother, who was like at Pinocchio's, who just like were like going to drag shows that you write about separately in the book, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What is, I think this also kind of ties into everything that we've talked about already, but what is an important lesson from queer history that may give hope and strength in a time when hatred and violence is growing against the queer community?
Oh my gosh. I mean, not giving up is up there. I think some of the biggest lessons are about how to keep organizing, how we need to raise money for those most in need, and that can be like its own kind of sense of purpose in times where we're literally being oppressed. And to know that like the community has been through this before. We've faced oppression, we've continued to exist, we've pushed through and helped the next generation find themselves and find drag and find this history that keeps getting erased. Put it in paper, hopefully it won't be erased again. You can always find it in some library. So yeah, just keep surviving through everything.
Definitely. And one of my favorite things too is just how expansively you've done your research, like internationally and through so many different cultures and so many different centuries. And do you feel like there's like any, this is like an off script question, but do you feel like there are like any people that you discovered in your research or learned more about in your research who have inspired like new drag or new work?
Oh my gosh, so many. I literally I made a map at one point in the process and was like, let me make sure I have representation from all these places, and researched like the history of drag in Africa, in Mexico that I didn't know as much before, in Japan. And there's figures in the book like Cupid from Cape Town, who for decades ran queer alternative spaces, concerts, drag pageants, and getting to see people have long-term success and a long-term impact on their community, even though I didn't know those stories before, is really inspiring. I just love to see queer people getting old. Like, that was the greatest joy from this, because not all the stories are happy, and some people do kind of like die before their time or not have the happiest moments at the end of their life. So to see old trans women, old drag queens, like living their best life, being connected to the community, that makes me so happy, which is why I wanted to end the book with me becoming an old lady, which is really like the best dream I can possibly have for myself. My biggest hope is just to age.
It is such a lovely ending, and it is beautifully drawn out. I'm very excited for everyone to see that part. So I guess this is a great question. How did you become Sasha Velour? When did you first begin your career as a drag queen? And did you ever think that you would become such an international sensation when you started?
No, I still don't think I'm an international sensation. Still trying. We'll get there. Yeah, like we talked about in the book, I kind of was Sasha Velour from the beginning. Same references, same style, same ridiculous shows, just trying to get people to show up and be into it too. And then I feel like I really discovered drag through learning the history. I read an essay by Sylvia Rivera about witnessing the Stonewall riots that I since have discovered may be somewhat fictionalized, but I love her for that. And that helped me realize the connections between drag this form of dress up and joy that I had always been doing just out of love of fashion and an inner femininity, and the queer and trans community at large, and specifically like creating our own stages, not just for shows, but to advocate for the inclusion of our community and for new ways of arranging the world to make space and equality for all of the people that fall under this umbrella. So that made me excited about drag. And that's when I let my drag like leave the mirror and just the fashion fantasy and realize I had to be creating it and connecting with people. So my debut, I guess, was in 2010, 2011. And it was really crunchy at the beginning. We celebrate the crunchy drag. And I started going out all the time in Brooklyn. And when I finally put together my show Nightgowns in Brooklyn, famously for 20 people showed up the first night, which was a huge success for a Thursday night. And then it just kept growing from there.
Have you always had dreams of one day writing a book and becoming an author? And if so, was the goal always to share the history of drag, or were there other things you wanted to write about as well?
I guess I never wanted to write my own story, but that seemed to be like a practical way to get a book done. I always wanted to talk about the history of queer resistance and of drag. I started a comic book about the Stonewall riots that I self-published, printed and stapled and folded it myself. So I do feel like I've been doing some of the research that's in this book for a long time. I guess I put together little zines when I was a kid. Like I've always loved the process of bookmaking, and the technical creative crafting side of this was really fun to do as well.
So involved.
Thank you for letting me.
I mean, it has made the book incredibly beautiful. Like, I mean, the end pages are yours, and like the direction and the design of the interior was also so much, you laying it out and having experience as a book production person in a past life. And yeah, I mean, I think it's so, you wrote an essay about this, but it is so amazing and just so incredible for this book to be coming out while there's the conversation around like the anti-trans laws and like everything like just keeps, and anti-drag bans like keep coming and
there's
coming.
Like over 400 laws right now in this country.
Right. And like you sold the book in 2020, like 2019, and like that was already like, a huge part of the conversation has never left, as we've seen in the book. But I don't know, there's something about this book coming out now that makes it feel more important than ever.
Yeah, I mean, if this could, I did imagine someone who considers drag to be something grotesque picking up this book, and like, is there a way to both speak to our community and uplift them and convince someone who's not already on the right side of this? Right. And I tried. We'll see if it works. Please give the book to your hateful anti-drag, anti-trans relatives too, because I think the facts, the stories, the personal experiences are undeniable. Who knows better than those of us who've experienced it and researched it? And drag belongs on the world stage just like queer and trans people belong in real life, in schools, in your office, to be protected under law and in medical care. So I speak about the history of resistance, and we got to keep carrying it on today.
Absolutely, 100%. And this, I think, is also part of that conversation. But what are you proudest of having contributed to your community, which is, and tell us more about your community, your multiple communities.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm proud recently that through the Nightgowns show, we've raised over $10,000 for housing and food supply in New York City for the queer and trans community. I definitely feel like in these moments, class difference becomes so defining in quality of life and in survival, who doesn't have the resources to arm themselves against the discrimination. So being able to use drag as a way to raise money is even more moving to me than awareness, although awareness and representation is gorgeous as well. And I'm just so proud of Nightgowns, which has become like a drag show for the community to enjoy. We put on good shows, and it's a platform for amazing artists to have a chance too. So I hope we continue that and make room for more artists.
Yeah.
I write about that whole story in here as well. You're tired of hearing it, I'm sure.
No,
Bless
I love
you.
hearing about nightgowns. I mean, it is just so, it's on so collaborative, and there's so many scenes in the chapter about nightgowns where you just talk about, you know, like the stage is truly for a collective. It's like not like your show, it is everyone's show, and like it's the audience's show. And I just feel like we so rarely see performance in that way, like in kind of mainstream. And it's amazing to know that there's a history of this, of like a collective performance. And
I just make the lights nice.
No. I mean, you do so much around all of these shows.
Yes.
You and Jenny do everything. So this is, I think, a little bit going back towards craft, but what qualities and disciplines in your life do you have? Do you practice that you think allows you to kind of make the kind of drag and community that you have?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I love the way people bring like their field into drag. I feel like everyone should be doing that in all things, but drag particularly is like, yeah, whatever kind of skills you have, you can find a way. So it's like I knew how to do graphic design, so I started doing visual things to be projected onto the screen, making backdrops. I guess research and academic side of me, I turned into late night speeches on the microphone. Yeah, I love seeing people bring in science or puppetry or animation or whatever their skill set is into their art and activism.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
And talk about your comics. That's a huge part of the book and of your drag too.
Yeah, I was really lucky to find this program called the Center for Cartoon Studies and study cartooning with some of the greatest artists. And so it felt like I had to put a comic in here. So the book is like sandwiched between two comics. And I love the way, I think there's a queer tradition to comics too. And it's all about like what can be said beyond language, which was fun to think about when writing a book. And I'm so much more comfortable with images. Like sometimes putting my thoughts down into words was really scary. I'm like, let me just do it with a gesture or a wink or like a visual. And I guess I could do that with the comics. Yeah. But, you know, queerness itself is sometimes written out of language or excluded from language. So we need the images to like write ourselves back in.
Yeah, that is such a lovely way of putting it. Okay, I think we're running a little low on time. We have 5 more minutes, so maybe one or two more.
Get to signing.
Okay, so what is one of your favorite memories from being on Drag Race?
Ooh, favorite memories from being on Drag Race? You know, it was getting to have like uninterrupted time with other drag performers. I feel like in the city, like we're always rushed, people are showing up late, we're rehearsing. But to spend like 6 weeks with people traveling, commuting in our big bus, it was a really, really fun time. And if I ever go back to Drag Race, that's going to be like why I go, basically, is for the chance to have it felt like very youthful, like summer camp, we called it. And it was really cute. I write about the moment of the so emotional performance and being backstage with Shay, Peppermint, and Trinity, my assistant Vigor Mortis, drag king stuffing petals up in my wig, because that's of course like seared into my memory and probably other people's too. But I got one to share the behind the scenes side of it all.
Yeah, it's such a lovely way of kind of telling the narrative of the rest of the chapter through that memory. It's so beautiful. Okay, so.
Not a favorite memory for me, though. A very stressful one, but still iconic.
This is a serious question. This is a very serious question, but they're wanting to ask how you overcome low points in your life, which you do write about in the book.
Yeah. I guess I've been trying not to think of it as like overcoming, because I think that's so much pressure. Putting a positive spin, or even like not a positive spin, just a like thinking about what my therapist would say to me, thank God for therapy. But accepting that is going to happen. I feel a low point like after I release every project. And now I like build in time or try to give myself something distracting to pour into, so that I don't like start overthinking what I've done. I think it's inevitable. Low points are inevitable. That's part of life, and sometimes there are lessons in the dark realizations. Other times you need to tune it out completely. But I think finding things that you know make you feel strong again is so important. And if it is dressing up and putting on an armor of makeup, then by all means go for it. If it's sports or other things people do for fun, I think that I can imagine that must be nice as well.
I mean, I think the whole book is sort of a testament of doing something with all the emotions, like the huge range of emotions. And you write about the curse in this book and like not overcoming it, but like living with it and just like processing it and kind of shaping it into something.
Because not everything can be overcome or avoided. So you gotta just dive in.
Maybe one last question. We still have like a minute, but tips for someone always daydreaming of being in drag but lacks action and doesn't know how to start.
Ooh, yes. I mean, you don't have to share it with anyone but yourself, but you should definitely go for it and try it. You can do it with a Sharpie and a little foundation. I don't know.
And a wig, even if it's not a great one.
Yeah, exactly. I think the best thing is like our community, this art form. Like it may seem judgmental on the small screen on TV, but fundamentally, like we just want more people to take part and be themselves. And you're not going to find a more accepting or open or loving community than drag artists. So you found a good hobby, go for it.
Awesome. Well, I think that's our time for today.
Oh, I'm almost done. Yeah, perfect. Spaced it out.
Oh, and yes, please, if you would like a signed copy, the link is once again in the description and also at premiercollectibles.com/Sasha.
Get your signed copy. Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm so grateful for all of your help with this.
I'm so excited for everyone to read.
Me too.
Hey, this is John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching today.